Good morning, dear students. Today we shall begin with the second part of the chapter Demand. In the previous class, we had studied about the meaning of demand, meaning of quantity demanded, and the two types of demand, that is, individual demand and market demand. So let us proceed. The topic for today is demand schedule. Demand schedule is a table showing different quantities of a commodity to be purchased at different prices of that commodity. The concept of demand schedule includes individual demand schedule and market demand schedule. So a demand schedule is basically a tabular representation of price and quantity demanded at each prices. Okay, now there are two types of schedules that are prepared. One is individual demand schedule for the individual consumers, and the other one is market demand schedule, which is going to be calculated by adding up the individual demands. So let us study about individual demand schedule. Individual demand schedule is a table showing different quantities of a commodity that one particular buyer or consumer in the market is ready to buy at different possible prices of the commodity at a point of time. So this tabular form is showing that there are certain prices of commodity X, and pertaining to that price, how much quantity of good X has been demanded. Okay, when the price was rupees 1, quantity demanded was 4. When price increased to rupees 2, quantity demanded decreased and it came down to 3 units. When price rose to 3 rupees, quantity demanded decreased again and it reached to 2 units. And when price increased to rupees 4, quantity demanded was 1. So with this schedule, we are able to see that there is an inverse relationship between price of a particular commodity and its quantity demanded. When price is high, the quantity demanded becomes low, and when price is low, quantity demanded increases. So this shows the inverse relationship. Market demand schedule. Market demand schedule is a table showing different quantities of a commodity that all the buyers or consumers in the market are ready to buy at different possible prices of the commodity at a point of time. So over here, the demand of each individual consumers are added up to get market demand. So when the price is rupees 1, consumer A demands for 4 units and consumer B demands for 5 units. So when we assume that there are only two consumers, consumer A and consumer B in the market, then the market demand can be derived by adding up their individual demands, that is 4 plus 5, that is 9. So as price increases, the quantity demanded decreases, and when we add these two demand of consumer A and B, we get market demand. So the market demands are 9, 7, 5 and 3. Now the next topic is demand curve. There are again two types of curves: individual demand curve and market demand curve. Individual demand curve is a curve showing different quantities of a commodity that a particular buyer is ready to buy at different possible prices of a commodity at a point of time. So this is the graphical representation of the individual demand schedule that we saw just now. This is the individual demand schedule. Price was 1 and then quantity demanded was 4. When price rose, quantity demanded decreased. So over here, this is the graphical representation of that same schedule. When price is 4, quantity demanded is 1. When price is 3, quantity demanded is 2. When price is 2, quantity demanded is 3. And price is 1, quantity demanded is 4. And once we join all these points through a straight line, that is known as demand curve, and it is denoted by capital D. So this is the individual demand curve. It has to be accompanied by individual demand schedule and the description of the graph. I have already told you that every time a graph is made, its description has to be written. So the following graph shows the individual demand schedule. Quantity of a commodity is shown on x-axis and the price on y-axis. Demand curve slopes downward from left to right, indicating inverse relationship between own price of the commodity and its quantity demanded. So just now we saw that demand curve is sloping downward from your left to your right, and this is showing the inverse relationship. Whenever a curve slopes from left to right, whenever it slopes downwards from left to right, it shows inverse relationship. Inverse relationship means that when price is high, quantity demanded is low, and when price is low, quantity demanded is high. Now the next curve is market demand curve. Market demand curve is a horizontal summation of the individual demand curves. It shows various quantities of a commodity that all the buyers in the market are ready to buy at different possible prices of a commodity at a point of time. So just now what we did in market demand schedule, we added the individual demands and then we got the market demand. Similarly, over here also, these are the individual demand curves of A and B. Both are sloping downwards, and once we add these two demands, we will get this one, that is market demand curve. Over here we can see that when price is 1, quantity demanded is 9. When price is 2, quantity demanded is 7. When price is 3, quantity demanded is 5. And when price is 4, quantity demanded is 3. So market demand curve is basically summation of individual demand curves, and you must have noticed that market demand curve is always a little bit more slant as compared to individual demand curves, and the reason behind it is that it is adding up the individual demands. So in the above graph, it is assumed that there are only two buyers in the market, A and B. Market demand curve has been derived by adding the demand of A and B. Market demand curve also slopes downward, showing inverse relationship between own price of the commodity and its quantity demanded. So this is the description of the graph. Now the last topic for today is slope of demand curve. Demand curve slopes downwards, indicating negative relationship between price of a commodity and its quantity demanded. Just now we saw that demand curve is sloping downwards. It is showing negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So the slope of demand curve is estimated as minus within bracket change in P by change in Q. So this is the formula for slope of demand curve. Minus is there to show the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, and it is to be calculated as change in price by change in quantity. It shows the ratio between change in price corresponding to a unit change in quantity demanded of a commodity. So over here we can see in this graph this particular change, that is AB is showing your change in price and BC is showing your change in quantity from one point to another. So the formula over here would be minus AB by BC. Now this change, that is change in price for every additional change in quantity demanded, this change is going to be same because this demand curve is straight in line. Demand curves are always straight in line, and as a result the slopes are always constant. So that is it for today's class. Today we have studied about a demand schedule, demand curve and slope of demand curve. The assignment questions for today are: what is a demand schedule? You need to write the meaning of demand schedule and an example also. The next question is: distinguish between individual demand curve and market demand curve. You just now saw what is individual demand curve and what is market demand curve. You will be able to define these two, and along with this you are also expected to give example. You are expected to make a schedule and then a curve for both the cases, for individual demand and for market demand, and you need to write the description as well. So three things have to be there: a schedule, a curve and the description of the graph for both these cases. So that is it for today's class. In the next class we will be studying about determinants of demand. There are various determinants of demand and we are going to discuss all these in a very elaborate manner in the next class. So that is it for today. Thank you.